friends, welcome to Meals with Maria. Today we are cooking food from the roaring 20s. Now, while fashion may be quite different, think like flapper dresses and snazzy suits, the food was actually somewhat similar. You may see some of these things on our table today, but there are a few differences. One thing is the 20s was a time of prohibition, so there was no alcohol on those tables whatsoever, or people were sneaking it by making gin in their bathtubs, which sounds scary and fun at the same time. Now, food was different because seasonings were less. They had less spices available, so the food was a little less seasoned. And the meat had to be cooked more well done. As far as the vegetables, same thing, because there was no refrigeration. So it took them a lot longer to create meals because you had to smoke something or can it, any sort of food preservation, salt it. It would just take longer. So yeah, those things don't sound too great. We were having overcooked, under-seasoned food, but we can take those recipes from the 20s and make them even better today. And there was some really good stuff back then. Because food preservation methods were actually ramping up, canned foods became more readily available, and people were making things like a salad I'm going to make in today's video called the Waldorf salad, which is a chicken salad, and using mayonnaise because mayonnaise was then canned, and canned foods were considered safer and fresher because you didn't have to worry about the refrigeration that people didn't have. I'm also going to make an authentic 1920s German potato salad from a restaurant in St. Louis, and some spaghetti and meatballs. Yes, it's an old classic, but the thing about that is somewhere between 1880 and 1920, meatballs got brought to the US because there was a ton of Italian immigrants. And those Italian immigrants obviously brought over their pasta and their meatballs. And Italians traditionally ate those two things separately. But somewhere along the lines, they started serving them together. And it's said that in the 1920s, that was the first time that I think it's like the Association, National Pasta Association, something like that. Okay, yes, Benny reminded me. It's the U.S. National Pasta Association that published the first spaghetti and meatballs combined recipe together. So I thought it'd be fun to make a great-grandmother's spaghetti and meatball recipe, and that way you know it's authentic back from the 1920s or so. I hope you enjoy these recipes and have a fabulous trip down memory lane. Okay, we're starting off by making this authentic German potato salad from Speck's restaurant in St. Louis. You need 5 cooked strips of bacon, so I'm just cooking those up, and I am boiling a big pot of water because we're going to get our potatoes boiling in just a minute here. The author of this recipe actually ate at this famous Speck's restaurant in St. Louis almost every day and always ordered the potato salad. So when the owner learned that she was getting married, he actually gave her the recipe as a wedding gift. So this is kind of a really fun recipe with an amazing backstory. So you need about 3 pounds of medium red potatoes, and you know the saying, waste not, want not. So my potatoes had some eyes on them, and I just want to cut those off and then put them in my boiling water, and you're going to boil that for about 30 minutes until tender. While those are cooking, you can dice up your 5 strips of bacon and make sure to reserve 4 tablespoons of the bacon drippings because we're going to end up cooking the onion within the bacon drippings. A good option here is also to use the real bacon pieces from Walmart, or if you really don't have anything like that, you can even use like the tiny little bacon bits from Dollar Tree, and I'm sure that it would be, a fine substitute. And you also want to chop up 1 medium onion. Again, the onion is kind of an important part of it, but if you don't have that, go ahead and use onion powder, and I'm sure it will taste great. Once your potatoes are done, drain them and cool them, and then you want to cut them into, and I didn't follow this instruction properly, but they should be 1/4-inch slices, so kind of like rounds, but I did mine in just like a regular potato salad dice, and it was fine. So whatever you want to do is totally fine. Then you want to saute the onion in the reserved bacon drippings over medium heat until the onion is tender. So that's going to be about 5 to 7 minutes. Once your onions are tender and sauteed, add in 1/4 cup of flour, 1/4 teaspoon of celery seed salt, and 2 teaspoons of salt. Stir until blended, and then add 1 cup of apple cider vinegar, 3/4 cup of water, and 1 1/4 cups of sugar. And yes, it is a lot of sugar, but it gives it this sweet and tangy flavor, so it does end up being absolutely delicious. When I did my video on cooking like the Amish, a few of you commented that your Amish recipe was actually like a German potato salad recipe. And this makes sense because the Pennsylvania Dutch are actually referred to as Pennsylvania Germans, and they're part of a group of German immigrants that settled in Pennsylvania during the 18th and 19th century. So there are comparisons. The German potato salad is also potentially a Pennsylvania Dutch recipe, but it also, I see similarities in the dressing and that sweet and tangy flavor with the sugar and the vinegar. So once you mix it, you want to bring it to a boil over medium-high heat and cook and stir for about 2 minutes until thickened. Then you can add in the potatoes and the bacon and cook and stir gently over low heat until heated through. When this is finished, you can sprinkle it with some parsley, and it's recommended that you serve it warm. So that's the different thing about a German potato salad is you're going to eat it warm versus cold. And I traditionally have always had cold potato salads, so it's very interesting to have that warm. And it's absolutely delicious. It's one of my stepmom's favorites, so I served it for her birthday with some steak tips and some rolls. And I do have all the recipes for those things down below in the description box as well if you want to know some great marinated recipes and some roll recipes with ranch dressing mix. Those are fabulous too. So this recipe overall was fantastic. It's a really cool 1920s recipe, and really cool that this woman, I think her name was Violet, got this recipe for her wedding gift. Next up, I'm going to make a chicken salad croissant sandwich, and this is a variation on that Waldorf salad that I talked about earlier. And we're going to switch a few things in and out, and it's going to be a little different than the original, and I'm going to work with what I have. So that's how we do things around here. You're going to want 1 cup of red grapes, and we're going to cut those in half. To that, you want to add 2 cups of shredded chicken. Now, I'm using a rotisserie chicken. You can cook up some chicken in your Instant Pot. I'll make sure to put a recipe for that down below, just super simple. You can do it in the crock pot, or you could use canned chicken. So if canned chicken is what you have, and that's the most affordable thing these days, go ahead and use a couple of cans of chicken, and that will treat you very well when it comes to a chicken salad. You also want 1 rib of celery. Now, I do have a fresh celery, but hey, if you buy like a big pack of celery and you think, well, I don't need just one rib for this salad, you can actually slice that celery up, put it in the freezer, and reuse it later. It defrosts really well. I also cut up 1 scallion. Alternatively, you can use diced yellow or red onion or a teaspoon of onion powder. And then add in 1/3 cup of Parmesan cheese. And the recipe calls for buttermilk, but I'm actually going to do a couple squeezes of lemon instead of doing the buttermilk. For spices, you want traditional 1920 spices such as 1 teaspoon of dried parsley flakes, 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of dill weed, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then you want to mix it all together with about 1/2 cup of mayonnaise. This is give or take. I feel like mayonnaise in a salad like this is always how you like it. I'm a mayonnaise person, so I always put a little bit extra, but you can go a little bit lighter too. And because we didn't put that 1/3 cup of buttermilk in, it may be a little bit drier. That's kind of how I like mine, so I just kind of compensated by adding the lemon and the extra mayo. But you can instead alternatively do 1/3 cup of buttermilk or the squeeze of lemon juice, and then 1/3 cup of milk, because that's actually a good substitute for buttermilk, because the buttermilk is actually just kind of like a more acidic milk. So if you do like a teaspoon of lemon juice and some milk, you're going to basically make the same flavor as buttermilk. Now, I had never added Parmesan cheese to my chicken salad before, and I am a true believer now. I will add Parmesan cheese every time. It's absolutely delicious. It gives it a fantastic flavor. The original recipe calls for croissants for this, which I think is very 1920s, but there were no croissants at my store, and I had these delicious whole wheat rolls, and I figured, you know what, that's what we have, that's what we're going to eat them on, and it's still going to be good, right? So use what you have. You don't have to go 100% 1920s all the time, but this is a great chicken salad recipe. It is so delicious. It was so good that we actually ended up reusing it and making a whole nother batch of it for when I went camping for lunches that day. And this particular day at home, I just served it on a whole wheat bun with some chips, and it was fantastic. Like, it's my new go-to recipe. That Parmesan cheese is everything. I mean, grapes in it, you get that crunch from the celery. It's absolutely fabulous. And yes, this is here. I just mixed it up while we were camping. I brought it with me, no mayo, and then I added the mayo right before I made the sandwiches, and that worked out perfect. So that's a little tip for you. If you want to make a chicken salad, Keep it cold in the cooler, but then add the mayo last minute so it doesn't get, soggy or whatnot. This next recipe is for great grandma's Italian meatballs, and like I said, these became popularized in the 1920s. So it's a classic, but it's delicious. You want to chop up 1 medium onion and saute that over medium-high heat with a couple tablespoons of oil for 3 to 4 minutes until tender. Then you want to add in 2 cloves of minced garlic and cook for about a minute longer, and then you're just going to let it cool while we mix everything else together. This recipe makes 8 servings, so I'm going to make about half the recipe today. So I'm going to start with a 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan cheese, and then we're going to do, it says 3/4 cup of seasoned breadcrumbs, so I'm going to do a 1/4 cup and then a 1/2 cup. I know there's, math behind that, but when you're using little cup measures like this, just do 1/4 cup and then a 1/2 cup because that's all you have. And then because my onions and garlic are cooled, I'm just going to put those in there. Then you want to add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and then a 1/2 teaspoon of each basil, oregano, and dried parsley flakes. To that, add in 1 pound of ground beef. The recipe actually calls for 1 pound of ground turkey and 1 pound of ground beef, and I just had 1 of ground beef. So whatever you have, make it work. I think, do both, and you can make you can make the regular recipe for 8 servings, or you could just do ground turkey. I've done ground turkey meatballs plenty of times, and they are fabulous. To that, I'm adding 1 egg, and then we're going to mix everything together. You don't want to mix it too much, but you want to make sure that everything is fully mixed together. Then I'm going to use a cookie scoop to shape these into about 1.5 inch meatballs. And I'm placing the meatballs right onto my sheet pan with a baking mat, but you could use tin foil, or you could use parchment paper, or you could spray down your pan and make sure that the meatballs don't stick that way too. You want to cook these at 375 degrees for about 20 minutes, and they come out absolutely perfect. On the side, I just cooked up some spaghetti according to the package and some just regular tomato sauce. I didn't make my own today. I just went with the store-bought stuff, heated that up, poured it over, and everything was delicious. Meatballs are always a winner in my house. They're one of our top 10 budget meals. They're one of our favorites, so you really can't go wrong with it, but it's always fun to think about period cooking and think about the fact that the first time that these were published in a cookbook was in the 1920s. So delicious meal that is still popular today. I want to thank you so much for watching today. I am so glad that you're here. I hope that if you haven't already, that you do press that subscribe button, like this video so that I know that we want to see more period cooking videos. I'm going to pop a cooking like it's the 1940s video right here for you so that you can check that out and get some more inspiration, and I'll see you all very soon.